PM Narendra Modi calls for state funding of polls to combat corruption. What is state or public funding of elections? Who is eligible for state funding? What is direct and indirect state funding of elections? Is the state funding a good idea? What should be done to prevent the lobbying and opaque funding of politics? GS Paper 2, Important Aspects of Governance, Transparency and Accountability. What is the context about? In the midst of a heated political debate over scrapping of 500 and 1000 rupee notes, PM Narendra Modi has suggested state funding of polls, along with simultaneous Lok Sabha and state assembly elections. It is aimed to improve transparency in public life and combat corruption. Collection of unaccounted money by leaders and parties has often been cited as the root of political corruption, as it leads to post-election favors being granted to poll financiers. State funding has been touted as a possible antidote. What is state or public funding of elections? This means that government gives funds to political parties or candidates for contesting elections. Its main purpose is to make it unnecessary for contestants to take money from powerful moneyed interests so that they can remain clean. For this to happen, state funding needs to be accompanied by strict accounting and transparency. It is also believed that state funding is a natural and necessary cost of democracy. It brings new and growing parties in par with the established parties, thus ensuring fair elections. If parties and candidates are financed with only private funds, economical inequalities in the society might translate into political inequalities in government. Countries keep changing laws relating to state funding depending on experience and financial condition. Who is eligible for state funding? The most common eligibility condition is share of votes gained in the previous elections. In addition, number of seats in legislative bodies is also used as a criterion. Usually, a lower limit for votes or share of votes is kept to prevent misuse of the provision by floating new parties that contest large number of seats. What is direct and indirect state funding of elections? Direct funding means giving funds directly to political parties or candidates. Indirect funding takes the form of various subsidies or access. Indirect funding can take the form of subsidized or free media access, tax benefits, free access to public spaces for campaign material display, provision of utilities and travel expenses, transport, security, etc. If both these types are included, then very few countries in the world remain with absolutely no state funding, direct or indirect. Is the state funding a good idea? In theory, state funding would provide a level playing field for political parties and cut out money power from the equation, but in practice things may not work out so linearly. India collects only about 16% of GDP as tax. The state expenditure on many essential public goods such as primary healthcare and public health engineering is very small. Given this situation, the public resources have to be channeled towards and not diverted from such essential services, and that too to finance something that already gets abundantly financed. Further, the state funding of elections will not prevent parties from lobbying and getting undisclosed supplementary private funding, with associated implications. Therefore, state funding is not the solution to opaque funding of politics in India. What should be done to prevent the lobbying and opaque funding of politics? In India, the main reason for the prevalence of black money in election spending is the unrealistically low limits set by the Election Commission of India on campaign spending by political parties and candidates. A more realistic campaign spending limits should be set. Part public funding of election campaigns is a practice in some countries. E.G. United States and Britain. We could have our own version. The strict monitoring of expenditure by political parties and their functionaries at every level, starting with the Panchayat, polling booth area and municipal ward, should be done. Every party should disclose its expenditure every month at every level. This should be open to challenge by rival parties, media, etc. The Election Commission could determine the actual expenditure and ask the parties to show source of income.